3, 2.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Young Guns. We're here with the great Ty Hudson from Tusk Talk with Ty. How's your holidays going, good sir?
Not too bad. I was telling Jackson before we recorded, I got myself a PS5.
Heck yeah, man.
So yeah, I'm doing fine. Wife's not super thrilled about it, but
yeah,
it is what it is, right?
Mm-hmm. So with the Arkansas versus Kansas Bowl, what's the excitement going on for the team? Like, because this is gonna be a fun matchup, I think, between two programs that I think are going on the rise.
Yeah, it should be a good game. Arkansas is didn't have the kind of year that Hog fans thought they would have. A lot of people thought Arkansas, local media, national media thought Arkansas would at least be a little more competitive than they were. And of course, A&M happened, which was just a devastating. That game still stings so much, especially knowing now, hindsight being 2020, just how bad they were.
Right.
Yeah. And then they lost to Liberty, another one that's mind-boggling. It just is. It's mind-boggling. I try to separate the fan from the media for myself, but those two games are just hard to do. They really, I don't know if you guys, I'm not going to swear, but those games still just hack me off. They crawl under my skin. Those are games Arkansas should have won, especially with Kendall and KJ and Rocket and that offensive line they have.
Those two games all gravel. Don't.
What's that?
I said those two games don't get you all gravel, don't you?
Yeah, they're a couple losses that you feel like shouldn't have happened for sure, but they did.
Right. But yeah, fine background on how Arkansas, Kansas happened in the Liberty Bowl. It was going to be Missouri, Kansas because Reddit college football on Twitter was like posting, hey, maybe Kansas, Missouri can happen. And then the Liberty Bowl was the first one to reply and be like,
yeah.
Like I forgot what the emoji was, but it was a good one because it was like they wanted it to happen, but then Missouri's like, we don't want to play Kansas.
Very bizarre. That was very strange. I thought those were their rivals. Why wouldn't you chomp at the bit? Like when Arkansas when they ended up playing Texas in the Texas Bowl. Oh my God! They weren't supposed to be. They weren't supposed to finish 6-6 that year, and they did. They were great. That was a great year for them. They finished ahead of schedule, and Texas looked okay. I think that it was Charlie Strong. They wanted it. They wanted every bit of that game. And for Mizzou to chicken out or whatever the hell happened, to not play KU is just bizarre. But we're thankful for it. I'll take the Liberty Bowl.
Yeah, Missouri's just weak. Even though they beat you, they're weak.
Yeah. Right.
So with the Razorbacks this year, it was going off to a hot start. So everything was kind of going on schedule at the beginning of the year with a win against maybe a Cincinnati team that we didn't think as good as we thought, and then a South Carolina team that would catch fire later. So going into the A&M game, I had money on the Hogs, so I was pretty invested in this game. So obviously, do you think that just spiraled into other losses?
I think it definitely dragged into that Bama game. It my God, you're supposed to be undefeated going into that Alabama game. I said on Tusk Talk, I told people, or maybe it was on Hogville, whichever show, they should be 4-0, ranked somewhere floating around the top, top 12, top 15, and to have a huge matchup for, to play Alabama in Fayetteville and maybe an opportunity to go toe to toe with these guys, finally get that monkey off our back. We haven't beaten these guys since the year I was married, 2006. And, of course, A&M happens. And then we didn't realize at the time just how bad A&M was. I didn't think that A&M was going to be that bad, as horrible as they were. But they, again, hindsight being 2020, it stings that much more because of how bad they were. I don't care who they beat at the end of the year. Bottom line was A&M was a bad football team, had no business beating Arkansas, and they did. And then the Bama game happened, and I think it compounded. I think the two things happened. Alabama caught Arkansas at the right time. they had some injuries racked up going into that game. Arkansas did, and they had that demoralizing defeat to the Aggies. So, yeah, it was a lot on their plate, and then then of course you lose to Mississippi State. They didn't have KJ for that game. KJ was not he wasn't healthy. He's banged up. So they'd lose that game to Mississippi State 40-17. And then you felt like they were getting back on track after, pummeling BYU and Auburn. And then they lose 2 more games. So up and down, mixed emotions kind of a year. It was a roller coaster ride for sure.
Yeah. So speaking of that roller coaster ride, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best, where would you rate the 2022 season of the Arkansas Razorbacks?
I had them. My original too early pick was 9-3. Preseason, after I had credentials with Hogville, I was able to go and watch them practice. And after watching them, I actually bumped it down to 8. My official pick, which is the week that they played Cincinnati, is when I made my official pick. And I bumped them down to 8-4. And I caught a lot of flack for it. A lot of people said, Ty, you're crazy. KJ's going to crush. Rocket's going to be an All-American. You're crazy. Hazelwood, this big-time OU wide receiver that transferred in, you're crazy. And I thought, I don't know, man. What I saw in practice, it just didn't look to me like a team that would be in that category of teams, that 9 to 10 win threshold. They looked to me more like a 6 to 8 win team threshold. So it didn't shock me that they went 6-6. So if it had shocked me, I'd probably say like a 4, right? But it was a little bit worse than I thought they would end up being. So maybe I'll give it a 6 out of 10. I mean, you still made a bowl game, and that's always a plus. That's more practices. That's more opportunities to sell merchandise. That's more opportunities for fans to have exposure to the team and to watch them play. And it's remotely close, with it being the Liberty Bowl just east of us here. But yeah, I would say a 6 out of 10. It wasn't a complete disappointment. Again, if they missed a bowl game, the fact that you lost to A&M, like I said, it hurts. The fact that you lost to Liberty hurts. You lost to Mizzou. That's another one that's a head scratcher. I mean, yeah, there's some disappointing losses, but again, you made a bowl game. So I on second thought, hang on. I'll give it a 5 out of 10. Let's do that, because that Mizzou game too is starting to sink in even more now that I mention it. I'll say 5 out of 10.
Well, there's a tight loss to LSU as well, and that A&M game basically killed your season right there, because it was like, oh, we're demoralized because that field goal, I mean. So it's like
LSU was understanding because they didn't. Again, you were without some marquee players. You were without. You had Cade Fortin and Malik Hornsby as your quarterbacks in this game, and these are 2 guys that are not SEC quarterbacks. It was understanding. Again, with a healthy KJ, they win that game. I mean, I think it's a no-brainer.
True. Mississippi State after a victory upset over Bama.
Right. Yeah. I put a lot of stock in KJ when he's healthy. I put a lot of stock in him. I think he's a top 4 quarterback in the SEC when he's healthy. That's been the problem. If you guys watch him play, that guy plays like he thinks he's a running back. I mean, he doesn't avoid contact. He wants contact. And that cost them in the long run. He ended up missing 9 quarters worth of play this year. That's a lot of time missed. In fact, I think it was more. I think it was 10. That's a lot of missed time for a quarterback in this league, any league, but that's a lot of missed time.
So what are the strengths and weaknesses of Arkansas that people need to look out for while watching the Liberty Bowl against Kansas?
Arguably, again, when at full strength, now they're without Ricky Stromberg at center. Again, another big blow for this bowl game for Arkansas. But at full strength, this is one of the most elite rush attacks in the country. They were top 6, top 8 between them and Ole Miss all year in the country. And that's against a pretty damn solid schedule, right? This is one of the toughest schedules in college football. And they still run all over people. A lot of that's because of KJ and, of course, Rocket. And you throw in A.J. Green, sophomore out of Oklahoma, Rashad Dubinion, who really has surprised me. Dubinion, I think he's going to actually. I'm curious to see how that portal works with AJ Green and these other running backs. They've already got a couple guys in the portal, but Dubinion came on pretty strong this year. But yeah, they push people around until, like Liberty. Liberty, I mean, they were in their backfield, 13, 14 times. It was just a shock. That was a shock. That was a stunner. But for the most part, nobody pushed these guys around. I mean, they ran all over a lot of really good teams this year. That's the thing you're going to watch out for Arkansas on the offensive side of the ball. They can run the ball. KJ's an effective passer. Doesn't force the issue if he doesn't feel like if he doesn't feel like the receiver's in great position to make a play on the ball, then he'll overthrow the receiver a little bit. He won't underthrow. He did a little bit this year. He did a little more than he did compared to last year, but still, I think he ended up with 4 picks, a great overall touchdown to turnover ratio when you consider how much he runs it. But they are not a very well-balanced offense. It's a run. It's really a power run offense in disguise as an RPO. They call it the veer and shoot offense. I would argue it's more of a power run RPO than it is anything. They're going to run the ball, and KU guys, for a Big 12 team to be as bad as they are on defense, that's saying something. Big 12, that conference doesn't know how to spell defense. KU to be at the tail end of the Big 12, that's going to be a mismatch for them. But there's a lot of other things going on here that I feel like gives KU quite the advantage.
There we go.
So how do you how do you think that the Razorbacks can defend Jalen Daniels passing with Kansas? Do you think they'll be able to limit it enough?
They haven't limited anybody this year. I don't know if they have an answer. I really don't. Now, I said that there are some reasons why I think KU comes in with a big advantage. It is having him back. Of course, he played the final 2 games. He started out 5-0 for them. He's a really talented quarterback. I like watching him play. He's a lot of fun. They've not limited anybody. I mean, they've made guys. I think the 3 of us could go out and pass for 275, 350, 3 or 4 passing touchdowns on this defense. Now, they made changes. Quincy McAdoo, who's a former 4-star wide receiver out of Arkansas, they moved him over to corner late in the year. That was a bit of you could see a shift, right? They moved Hudson Clark, really slow-footed corner, but he's got the size and the mentality and the physicality to play that middle safety spot. So they moved Dwight McLaughlin, a transfer, over. Well, no, they didn't move him. They actually just moved Hudson Clark to middle safety, and they pushed Quincy McAdoo to that corner spot. And since then, Arkansas secondary has kind of stabilized itself as much as it can. I would say you would spy this quarterback and bumper pull, or maybe they would spy him with Drew Sanders or someone. But I don't know. I would spy him. Maybe they push Pooh Paul, the redshirt freshman, who's going to end up starting for this game again because they don't have bumper pull. Big time, huge loss for Arkansas. Drew Sanders, an All-American potential first-round draft pick. He's out of this game. I don't know. They're going to have to spy him. They're going to have to do the best they can with what they have. I see him having a big game against this Arkansas defense, if I'm being honest, one way or another.
So what are the keys to victory for Arkansas in the Liberty Bowl?
Yeah, they're gonna have to make plays in the backfield against KU's offense, and that's obvious for any week. Doesn't matter who you play, but for Arkansas to at least contain KU and what they're capable of doing on offense, they got to make plays in the backfield. They've got playmakers. They are a pretty good Big 12 offense where they can't spell defense. They can sure as hell spell offense in that conference. And KU was, I think, for most of the season, was one of the top 3, top 4 offenses in that conference. That's saying a lot. I've got a lot of respect for KU. I really do. And I'd like that Arkansas gets this matchup. But it's going to be to make plays in the backfield against KU, find a way to contain that quarterback and their run game. On offense, it's going to be about finding someone in their receiver room. They lost Jaden Hazelwood, the OU transfer, former 5-star. He's out. He's going to opt out. He's going to get ready for the pros. Trey Knox, their tight end, who was their starting tight end all year, struggled as a blocker, but is a solid check down target for KJ. He's out. They're going to rely on slow-footed Nathan Bax. I love the kid's mentality. I love his physicality. He's going to be a little bit better blocker, but he's not the receiver that Trey Knox was. And they're going to rely on freshmen. Samuel Bakke, former 4-star / 3-star out of Georgia, and the Fayetteville Star in track athlete, 4-star, number 1 player in the state of Arkansas, Isaiah Centennia. That's who they're going to rely on. So they're going to have to find a way. I'm not saying they got to throw the ball for 250. They beat Penn State last year throwing for 100 yards. But they're going to have to find some kind of a distraction to push KU out of the box, because then it leads to that final key, which is run the damn ball. Run all over KU. They can't stop it. They couldn't stop it in the Big 12. They sure as hell shouldn't be able to stop it against Arkansas. But I'd say those are the 3 things they need to do.
Do you think that Sam Pittman will have them up for this game? Because I have a feeling that Kansas will be up because this is their first bowl game in years. Do you think that Sam Pittman do you think the guys will be mentally in it?
Yeah, it'll be their first bowl game since 2008. That's how big it is for Kansas.
It's big, and not only that, this win will decide winning season or losing season.
Mm-hmm.
And so both teams have got to stress that, right? I mean, for KU, you've had this amazing turnaround. You started off 5-0. Everyone was on the hype train. Hell, I was. I thought it was fun watching them. And then, of course, the quarterback gets injured, and they kind of fall off the face of the earth. But they had a great year. For KU football, that's incredible. 6 wins is huge for them. I don't know if Sam can do it or not. I don't know. He can be a motivator. He's no Houston Nutt by any stretch of the imagination. I don't know if you guys have ever seen like Houston Nutt rallying the troops at Arkansas, but it's worth the watch. That guy, every time I listen to him talk, I want to put the pads on. I might be 39 and fat as hell, but I want to go play football for the guy right now. Let's go. I don't know that I've ever seen Sam, at least from the exposure we get, I don't know that I've ever seen him really do that unless it's in a post-game scenario where he's telling them to turn the jukebox on and let's get the party.
Oh, I love that. It's like, turn that jukebox on.
It's huge, and it's a great, saying, and it's great. It every fan, if you walk up to a fan and you say, turn that jukebox on, they immediately think of Sam Pittman. But as far as getting these guys emotionally ready, I think he can. I mean, I think he can ready the troops. Whether or not they execute and whether or not they put a good product on the field for the game is something else entirely. But they are, listen, they're walking in there with bits and pieces of what they had left over, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So he better get them riled up, or this could be it could be an L for Arkansas easily.
Mm-hmm.
So that's gonna be fun. The highs and lows of 2022. Now I know the highs were beating 2 of the future Big 12 teams, Cincinnati, BYU, and we were talking about a little while ago just now about that loss to Liberty and the loss to Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
Take us through the highs and lows of 2022, or what could have been, so to speak.
Yeah, not a lot of highs. I mean, maybe beating Ole Miss in Fayetteville. I set up in the media box for the first half of that game. Our setup at Hogville was that I had to go in games in Fayetteville. I would go and I'd have to leave at half so I could come back here and get my studio set up and get ready to go live immediately following the game. But I got to watch that first half, and I kind of felt like walking back to my car. I think I did a halftime show that I called the Huff and Puff. With, me huffing and puffing back to my car, having to walk all the way down Razorback Road down to lot 56. But I can remember thinking, like, Arkansas is about to beat the hell out of a what could be a top 20 football team in Ole Miss. That was definitely a high. I think starting off the year beating, Cincinnati. I didn't think that highly at the time of South Carolina. I'm not going to lie. I said they might be lucky to make a bowl game. The turnaround that team had, knowing what I know now, we should have celebrated harder. South Carolina ended up being a damn good football team, and I'll be real honest. Had they scheduled South Carolina later in the year, I don't think they beat the Gamecocks. I just don't. Not with the health concerns of Arkansas, and just the overall product just wasn't as good as it was in 2021. But yeah, I'd say beating Bobby Petrino, your former head coach, who left quite a bit of drama behind, and
with the little secretary on the back of the motorcycle,
the blonde on the back of the bike. Yeah, that was special. But you know what? He made that a game. They wouldn't go away. I mean, they really felt like Arkansas should have won that game something like 49-7, but he made it a game. But it was still, you beat him, and that felt like it could be a hurdle. Cincinnati felt like it could be a hurdle. I'll be real honest. I wasn't big on Cincinnati. I thought they were overrated all year long, just like I thought Ole Miss was overrated all year long. I think both those things turned out to be true.
Right.
Maybe Cincinnati finished a little bit better than I thought they would, but not by a lot. When you consider the talent they had to work with in the conference they played in. But they did finish 9-3 or whatever it was. But I felt like they were overrated. But at the time, a lot of fans thought that was a high moment. And I'll give them that. But yeah, a lot of lows. I think there were as many lows as there were highs, maybe more lows, simply because, again, A&M not giving Alabama a better game in Fayetteville, not having KJ for Mississippi State, and then losing that game, losing to Liberty, losing to LSU, and losing to Mizzou. I mean, look, it is what it is. Some Hog fans don't want to hear it, but man, there were a lot of lows this year, a lot of unexpected lows.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So had they beaten Texas A&M, had that field goal been good, would the season have been better for Arkansas?
No.
They still would go downhill.
The only difference is you win 7 games. I mean, that's the difference. Cincinnati, South Carolina, Missouri State, they start out 3-0. I watched every one of those games twice, and there were some major red flags for this team. And I said from the get-go, if it happens once, maybe it's a one-time thing. If it happens twice, maybe it's a 2-time thing. If it happens 3 times, it's no longer a coincidence. And what was going on was that secondary was, guys, it was atrocious. It was bad. Right. I mean, like I said earlier, they made average quarterbacks look like Heismans because there were so many issues with that secondary. They should have beaten A&M. And again, A&M's an atrocious team. I get what people say. The KJ Jefferson fumble when he tried to leap from the 3-yard line, and then A&M scoops and they do what they do, right? They go on and they find a way to win that game. But I still don't think it would have mattered because late in that game, KJ put together a drive, and again, they should have won the game, right? KJ showed that while that play had an effect for at least a couple of quarters, he was able to overcome it and have a really good finish to that game for the most part. But they laid an egg against Alabama. They laid an egg against Liberty. They laid an egg against LSU. Of course, not KJ's fault. He was out of that game. And they laid an egg against Mizzou. I mean, sometimes you just are what you are. And while that game was, again, an emotional loss for Arkansas, I do think it had some impact on that Alabama game. I still think they would have finished with just one less loss, if anything.
Right. So as we've been talking a lot on this show, had KJ played against LSU, we'd be talking about an Arkansas victory over LSU, so to speak. What could they have done better against Liberty and Missouri? Like, where did they go wrong on both of those games?
Liberty, I'm stunned. Like, I think they gave up 14 tackles for loss.
Right.
That's unreal. That shouldn't happen. I don't care. I mean, hell, had Alabama, when Alabama does something like that, it's like, wow, 14 TFLs in a game. For Liberty, I don't care who their head coach is. While that does matter, Hugh Freeze, it does matter. But it's Liberty. They don't have the talent that you have on the field, not even close. I don't know. I guess the answer there would be for the offensive line to pull their heads out. I don't know. It was bad. It was bad all the way around. I mean, the defense did their job. They held Liberty to 21 points. Now, Liberty's not an offensive football team. A lot of people saying, well, they're pretty good. I mean, look who their head coach is. Their offense is this, that, and the other. No, it's not. They average like 23 points a game. They're horrible on offense. Their defense is really good. And they showed out. It was a great game plan, and it worked. I guess game plan better. And I think you could say the same thing about Mizzou. But I will say that, and I know it's kind of a cop out, but I think there is truth in it. But I will say Mizzou views this game as a rivalry. Arkansas doesn't. And their fans certainly think it's a rivalry. Their players certainly think it's a rivalry. And Drinkowitz has bought into that whole thing. You know, he's an Arkansas native. He's bought into this being a rivalry. Nobody in Arkansas thinks this is a rivalry, even though Mizzou has their number. So maybe the answer there is everyone take this game a little bit more seriously. Treat it like when they play LSU. That's to Arkansas fans, it's a rivalry. I don't think it is to LSU fans. It's kind of a flip Arkansas-Mizzou situation, right? Where Arkansas fans take that game more seriously than LSU fans. It's the same thing with Mizzou and Arkansas. Arkansas doesn't take this game serious.
Yeah. Well, speaking of rivalries, we do suspect that Texas and Oklahoma will join the SEC a year earlier than expected, so to speak.
Right.
What's your reaction to that as an Arkansas fan? Because, like, you know, you're going to get to see Arkansas be able to go back to playing Texas annually, and you may get a new rivalry, so to speak, with Oklahoma. I don't know when it would be exactly, but give us your reaction from an Arkansas's perspective.
And what do you think of a pool with those four? A&M, Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas.
It'd be brutal. And I don't know how. I don't know how adding those two teams helps Arkansas. Sure. I just don't. You know, it may not affect recruiting as much as people think, but there have been times when Arkansas has been able to out-recruit Oklahoma and Texas in Texas. They've beaten out players in Oklahoma to grab, you know, to bring to Arkansas. But that means you still got to play them on the field. And 9 times out of 10, they are beating you for prospects. You might win one here or there. Katron Jackson's a great example. Golly, I hate that kid's in the portal. But Texas wanted him bad. And Arkansas was able to walk into the state of Texas and pull him out a top, I don't remember what he was ranked, but he was a 4-star, big-time receiver out of the state of Texas. They've been able to do that. Part of that's because you're in the SEC and they're not. Now that's gone. They're in the SEC and they're going to have that now to kind of to add to their recruiting shtick when they're talking to these players. From most fans I talk with, they love it. They love the idea. You know, Fayetteville is right in the northwest corner, as you two are well aware of. It's right in the northwest corner. We're not far from the Missouri borderline. We're not far from the Oklahoma borderline. Oklahoma fans and Arkansas fans have been known to clash on Dixon Street. They've been known to clash down in the River Valley, down in Fort Smith. They don't like each other. I've heard of bars breaking out in West Siloam at the casino there because it's right on the Oklahoma-Arkansas border. I've heard of bar fights and things of that nature. Arkansas and Oklahoma fans don't like each other. There's a natural disgust between these two fan bases. I don't really know why.
Because of the Orange Bowl, that one Orange Bowl that Lou Holtz won over Barry.
It could be. It could be. I mean, that's a long time ago, but maybe it could go back to 2000 when in the Cotton Bowl when Oklahoma, horrible game offensively, but Oklahoma found a way to win that game after just winning the national title. And maybe Hog fans are upset about that. I don't know. The basketball games were even entertaining. Back when Blake Griffin, played at Oklahoma, those games were entertaining inside Bud Walton Arena. I don't know what it is. That feels like it could be an organic rivalry, maybe not on the level of Texas and Arkansas. But that was a real rivalry. Arkansas and Texas was a real rivalry back in the day. I'm excited. I get to cover it, right? I get to talk about it. I get to do my job. Fans have got to love it because, yeah, like you mentioned, they're going to get a home at home every year with one of those two, maybe both. So we'll see. It's going to be brutal. It's going to be rough. For football. Now, basketball and baseball, I think Arkansas is going to be okay, but football, it's going to be rough.
Yeah, basketball, Arkansas is doing awesome there with Eric Musselman as head coach. But when Barry Odom left the DC position to become the new head coach for UNLV, does it hurt Arkansas in any way, shape, or form? And who do you think will be the next defensive coordinator for Arkansas?
Well, they have their defensive coordinator. The Central Florida DC, they hired him, Travis Williams.
Oh man, I missed that, didn't I?
Yeah, it happened, and it was kind of weird. It wasn't a loud, big splash hire. It wasn't the cat out of Maryland. I forget his name. The Maryland DC that everyone thought it was going to be. It happened, and it felt. I mean, I guess not for me because I cover them, but yeah, Travis Williams wasn't a big splash hire. Now he's an Auburn grad. He coached a couple of years at UCF as a D coordinator, was able to reel in some big time prospects. He had a couple of 4-stars committed to him at UCF, thought he was going to bring them here. Nope. I think they went on and committed and signed with Maryland, I believe, but I forgot their names now. They were twins, 4-star linebackers. But I mean, it's not a home run hire, and I think a lot of fans are kind of, they're not, I wouldn't say they're skeptical, but they're going to give it a shot. They're going to see what it is. But make no mistake about it, every move that Sam makes from this point on, bowl game, transfer portal, if they sign anybody else from high school, I don't think they will. And then spring, he's got a lot on his plate. He's got to really rally the troops, and he's got to do something to create some excitement for 2023. Because I'm going to be real honest with you, even with KJ coming back, even with an all-American potential running back and Raheem, a.k.a. Rocket Sanders, even with those pieces coming back, you still feel like there's just not a lot of excitement for next year. And that's not usually a good sign, because the last couple of times that happened, that coach was fired. Chad Morris didn't get to finish year 2, and Brett Bielema at the end of year 5 was fired shortly after walking off the field after a loss. So I'm not saying he's going to get fired next year. I'm not saying that. But it's going to really, what he does next year is going to impact what happens in the year beyond that, because there's just not a lot to be excited for with football right now, with Razorback athletics. There's just not, if I'm being honest.
Ooh. Mm-hmm. But, maybe 2023 is a little better. So, because you got K. Jefferson. So, what's your take on that? How much does it help Arkansas for 2023?
Yeah, I mean, that's huge. Without KJ, you're probably panicking. I mean, Kendall's back, and that is good news for Arkansas if you're just talking about from a consistency standpoint. I'm shocked he's back for a 4th year, if I'm being honest. I didn't think that guy would last 4 years in a good way. I figured he'd find a head coaching job. And that there's still a lot of offseason left. People forget there's coaching changes in the month of January all the time. So it's not completely out of the woods. We still got bowl games left, but KJ coming back is big. I don't know that you're ready to trust this offense to Jacoby Criswell, who transferred in from North Carolina. I don't know that you're fully ready to hand the offense over. You want him a year to grow in the offense under someone like or behind someone like KJ Jefferson, and then let him take over, right? Is big. I mean, without a doubt. And I'm not trying to, for any Hog fan watching this, I'm not saying that it's all bleak. There's definitely some good. There's a lot of good. I mean, I feel pretty good about what's going on at wide receiver. I feel really good about what's going on at linebacker. Christopher Paul, redshirt freshman, who's a freshman All-American. Jordan Crook, Manny Powell. There's some good signs. The secondary should be mostly back next year, hopefully improved. There's just some questions at tight end and offensive line and some other spots, but there's a lot of good. But I'm simply saying that Sam, he needs to create a little bit more excitement, and a bowl game would be huge, and then finishing things up in the portal would be huge. But KJ coming back, it was huge. There's no doubt. It was the number 1 recruit for them to sign this year, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that KJ can translate to the NFL at all? Do you think he would be like a fullback in the NFL, or do you think that someone can develop him into a starting quarterback?
I don't know. As someone who does and has watched the NFL for a long time, doesn't make me an expert. Anyone watching this has probably got twice as much football under their belt in terms of watching the game. But as someone who has watched the game and seen guys that, I mean, like Baker Mayfield's a really good example. I mean, who would have thought that guy, big-time walk-on at Oklahoma, would transform into, especially when you consider his size. He's not tall, he's not big. He's just really athletic, and he's a hell of a playmaker. Who would have thought that his game would translate at the level that it did at Oklahoma? How much of that has to do with Lincoln Riley and how much of that has to do with that offense at the time? Sure. And then for him to go to the NFL and kind of lay an egg for the most part. Now, he's looked pretty good lately with the Rams. Not going to lie, pretty awesome what he did against the Broncos. I love that. That comeback against the Raiders, that was, oh my God, chef's kiss. Mwah, I loved it. But I don't know. I mean, he's proven he's smart with the football. Goes through his reads. I talked to a guy by the name of Stephen Hamner. He's a former quarterback at the college level, played D2 football. He now runs a website called or a YouTube channel called QB Spotlight. And he actually works and trains with athletes all the time, quarterbacks, pitchers, you name it. He works with. That's what he does. He works for a company that does that. And he's talked about KJ, and he thinks his game could translate to a certain degree in the NFL. There's certainly some mechanics and things that he has to work over, but I'm not an expert. I would refer to Stephen Hamner before myself for sure. Anyone watching this probably, but I don't know if his game would. He strikes me as probably a guy that would roam around free agency for a little while, maybe make a roster. It's not easy, as we all know, to operate a big-time NFL offense. It's not easy to do. You got to have the right guy at the right place at the right time.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that next year, I don't know, with everything that went wrong, do you think that they can bounce back? Like, what do you think is the probability of them getting back to 8 wins again?
Well, yeah, it definitely starts with what's going on defense. The secondary's got to be solidified. You know, they got to solidify this thing, and the secondary's got to play at a higher level than they did in 2022. Yeah, they've got a lot of things they need to work on the defensive side of the ball. I'm still not super thrilled with what's happening on special teams. They pay Scott Fountain, a former Georgia special teams coordinator. They pay that guy a lot of money, and I've not been super thrilled with what's going on in special teams. And it's, again, you've got KJ and Rocket back. That's big. I don't know. The offensive line is going to look quite a bit different next year. They're going to have to solidify the receiver room. You know, a lot of change is going to happen. And again, they're going to have to kill it in the portal. They're going to have to kill it in the portal if they want to get to 8 wins again next year.
So I'm looking at the 2023 Arkansas schedule. After you guys play at home against BYU on September 16th, you're not going to be able to have a home game until October 21st against Mississippi State. Your road / neutral site will be September 23rd at LSU, September 30th at the Jerry Dome against Texas A&M, October 7th at Ole Miss, and October 14th at Bama. So it just seems like it's way too early to say whether there's going to be a win here or there. So, I mean, that's going to be a rough time for right now.
Right.
What's your take on the 2023 schedule so far?
Yeah, I don't like it. I mean, I don't like that being away from home for that long. And not only that, you start the season off in Little Rock against Western Carolina. Like, what are we doing? Get the hell out of Western, get the hell out of Little Rock. I don't know what they're doing there. I'm so sick of games. I'm sorry. And I Little Rock crowd, people outside of NWA, they pretty much, if they're in my audience, they know how I feel about it. I think the most diehard fans live outside of NWA. I will give them that. And they truly deserve that title. They need to get out of Little Rock. It's just the dumbest thing in the world. They keep playing down there. They're losing money. They've admitted that. Former ADs have admitted that. Former AD Jeff Long, Bobby Petrino talked about it like it was an away game. He said, we treat this like an away game, even though we play in front of a home crowd because of all the preparation that's involved and the time lost that they have to use to travel down there. And it costs something like $1 million just to travel down there. It makes no sense. And now you look at this schedule where you do turn around, you play in Fayetteville for a couple of weeks after that against Kent State and then against BYU, which the BYU game will have a pretty good draw. you feel like you should start off the year 3-0, but we all know that lately, since the Bobby Petrino era, nothing's a given with Arkansas non-conference opponents anymore. Nothing's a given. It used to be their non-conference record was great up until after the Petrino era. Once Brett Bielema took over, or John L. Smith, I should say, and then Brett Bielema. But yeah, I don't like the schedule at all. I think it's just you got to go to Gainesville later in the year. I mean, you got to go to Tuscaloosa. You got to go to LSU. You got to go to Baton Rouge. Are you kidding me? That's insane. It's probably once again going to be one of the hardest schedules in college football, simply because of who you got to play and where you play them. That's what makes this damn league so tough, man.
It can be like that.
At Oxford, I mean, I get it. Ole Miss isn't exactly a blue chip, but man, it's not easy to go into Oxford. I've heard Oxford's a pretty rough place to play at.
And Lane Kiffin's not likely to be distracted by job offers at that time like he was this year at the tail end of 2022.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm going to be honest. If he's still there after next year, I'll be shocked. I really didn't think he'd be there for very long. And if he's there after 2023, I'll be shocked.
Mm-hmm. So can you give us a score prediction, Ty? What you think it's going to be? How do you think the game's going to be played?
Oh, man. I was talking with on Hogville. We did a live earlier, and I told Dudley Dawson, longtime writer here in Arkansas, covering the Hogs. Good guy. Like Dudley a lot. Dudley and Oskirk, two really good guys. Glad I got to work with them. I told him this is a coin flip. It's hard for me to pick simply because of all the missing pieces that Arkansas are going into this game with. There's so much missing. You know, your production at wide receiver just took a huge hit with Jaden Hazelwood opting out. Defense, oof. I mean, bumper pull, Drew Sanders out. You know, I mean, they're not. You know, they're opting out in this game. We already talked about Trey Knox, your starting tight end. There's just too many missing pieces. KU's they've not been hit near as hard. I've started off my bowl pick'ems. I'm on fire. I'm like 14-3. And I am totally flexing, as I did on Hogville for just a second. But I'm going to tell you what I've been doing is when I do my research in each and every one of the bowl games, first thing I look at is opt-outs. Mm-hmm. Who's been impacted the most with opt-outs? And so far, I'm on fire picking those teams that have been least affected by opt-outs. I'd probably pick KU. Now at full strength, yeah, I think Arkansas wins this game probably pretty easily, if I'm being real honest. I think they win it pretty easily simply because of Arkansas's run game and their physical nature. KU's defense is atrocious. They're, like we mentioned, they're horrible. Arkansas should be able to run a team like that out of the ballpark, but that's just not going to happen here, I don't think. I think KU probably finds a way to win this game. I haven't made an official pick yet. I'll probably do so tonight or tomorrow, but I'm leaning real heavy towards KU. Arkansas has the tools, but the problem is they've lost so much going into this game. If they can establish the run game and find a way to disrupt KU in the backfield, then Arkansas should win it, and it'd still be a pretty close game, but Arkansas should be able to win it. But I feel like I don't know about you guys, but I feel like this is going to be like a 45-47 kind of game. You know, it's going to be real high scoring and fun, hopefully.
I can most definitely see that. So, like before we go, anybody. So for anybody who doesn't know who you are, you know, anybody that doesn't really know what shows you do, or like where you're at, like, can you tell them where you're at on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, you know, all that stuff, you know?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. You can find me on at Tyzilla80. No, it's not Tyzilla anymore. My God, I haven't gone into that in a while. At Ty Hudson 83 on Twitter, and then I've also got Tusk Talk with Ty, which is my main show now. But Tusk Talk with Ty is how you find me on YouTube. That's my show. I do about roughly 3 or 4 shows a week. You know, shout out to all my sponsors, Direct Service Overhead and Odd Soul and Apex Tattoo Studio. All 3 of those guys, all 3 of them, they sponsor my shows. My Patreon supporters help me grow it. It's been 2022 is a rough, kind of a mixed bag year for Arkansas fans, but man, I'm glad we kind of got to go through that year together, and I always enjoy doing post game shows and a lot of fun.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Ty, and enjoy the rest of your holiday season.
Yeah, man, you too. Happy New Year's.
Happy New Year's.
Happy New Year's.